All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack what is arguably the single greatest and definitely the most shocking underdog triumph in the history of international football. I want you to travel back with me to the summer of 2004. Picture the landscape of European football back then. It was entirely dominated by absolute giants of the game. We're talking Zinedine Zidane, Luis Figo, Pavel Nedved. And into this arena walks a team that had literally never won a single match at a major international tournament. Not one. Yet somehow, against all odds, Greece walked away as the champions of Europe. To really grasp the sheer impossibility of what they pulled off, you have to look at where they started. Bookmakers had Greece as 150 to 1 outsiders to win the tournament. 150 to 1? To put that staggering number into perspective, one incredibly bold punter actually placed a combined stake on Greece and walked away with a mind-boggling payout of over £332,000. No way, right? Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, outside of their own dressing room saw this coming. It was a statistical anomaly that completely shattered the expectations of the entire footballing world. Now, you would think a fairy tale like this would be universally celebrated, right? Well, actually, scratch that. The media heavily branded their win as anti-football. In fact, The Telegraph ran this incredibly melodramatic headline saying, "A tear flowed down the face of the beautiful game." Critics were loud, calling them boring, defensive, and rigid. But honestly, to just write off this triumph as a lucky, ugly blockade completely misses the absolute tactical genius we're about to uncover. So how on earth did they do it? Here's our agenda for today's explainer. We'll start with the greatest football miracle, then dissect masterminding the Greek defense, see how they were capitalizing on the counter, talk about forging a football family, and finally look at the ultimate tactical achievement. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The greatest football miracle, a shocking path to glory. Let's see how a team with a historically disastrous track record on the world stage managed to conquer Europe. Remember, their past tournament appearances were basically as tourists. I mean, they lost 3 times, failed to score entirely, and conceded 10 goals at the 1994 World Cup. But their gauntlet run in the knockout stages of Euro 2004 was totally unprecedented. Greece strung together 3 identical, fiercely gritty 1-0 victories. And look at who they beat. France, the defending champions. The Czech Republic, who easily had the tournament's most dangerous attacking side. And Portugal, the heavily favored host nation. Pulling off a 1-0 upset once? Sure, that could be a fluke. But doing it 3 times in a row against literal football royalty? That proves this was by absolute design. Moving on to Section 2. Masterminding the Greek defense. Otto Rehhagel's system. The architect of this unbelievable run was their German coach, Otto Rehhagel. He was a wily veteran who had already achieved massive success in the Bundesliga. And when he took over Greece, he looked at his roster and realized a harsh but undeniable truth. Trying to play open, expansive, free-flowing football against Europe's elite with the squad he had? Yeah, that would be completely suicidal. So instead, he implemented a system he called Kontrollierter Offensive, which translates to controlled offense. It was a highly pragmatic philosophy, built strictly around the actual strengths of the players he had available. Look, he didn't have silky playmakers, but he did have robust, tall, and highly disciplined defenders. So he built a fortress. Rehhagel made sure his team was functionally flawless, rather than aesthetically pleasing. It was all about getting the job done. At the time, you have to remember, the rest of the footballing world was shifting toward modern zonal marking and these broken teams where attackers didn't really have to defend. Greece, they went the complete opposite direction. They embraced an unapologetic, old-school man-marking approach. It was a total throwback. They literally assigned specific players to stick to the opposition's star attackers, like glue, tracking them everywhere they went on the pitch. And Rehhagel was ruthless about adapting these assignments based on the opponent. This definitely wasn't a one-size-fits-all setup. For example, he used Kostas Katsaronis, who was a super flexible midfielder, to track Spain's Raul, simply because Raul liked to drop deep, and Katsaronis was comfortable following him there. He slapped Yorgos Giroudidis onto the lightning-fast Thierry Henry, and for the giant Czech striker Jan Koller, he assigned the aerially dominant Michalis Kapsis to nullify him entirely. Every single star opponent had a customized shadow. But the real anchor of this whole defensive strategy was the sweeper system. While his teammates were totally locked into their man-marking assignments, Roma center back Traianio Stellis operated as the free spare man. His job? Stay 2 steps ahead of the play. Because man-marking naturally creates gaps when defenders get dragged out of position, Dellis had the absolute vital task of reading the game, stepping across, and extinguishing any fires before they could turn into actual scoring chances. He was the ultimate safety net. Which brings us to Section 3, capitalizing on the counter, offensive efficiency. Because as we all know, you can't actually win a football match without scoring. So let's examine how Greece managed to find the back of the net when it mattered most, against literally the best defenses in the world. Let's be honest, they possessed very limited attacking flair. They simply couldn't pass their way through the middle of the pitch with intricate combinations. So their offensive blueprint relied entirely on high-efficiency, low-risk tactics. We're talking fast breaks down the wings and drawing fouls to set up dead ball situations. They waited with this absolute methodical patience, absorbed immense pressure, and struck precisely when the opposition overcommitted. And their execution of this game plan was just flawless. It resulted in 3 nearly identical towering headers. Against France, Zagorakis crossed it perfectly to Angelis Chorisius. Against the Czechs, Dellis scored the only silver goal in international football history from a corner kick right before halftime and extra time. And then in the final against Portugal, another corner, another towering Chorisius header, 3 crosses, 3 headers, and 3 giants of European football knocked completely out. Section 4. Forging a football family, unity over rivalry. Because tactics alone, no matter how good, don't win tournaments. Otto Rehhagel also had to orchestrate a massive psychological shift within what was a historically divided national team. See, historically, Greek football was plagued by these intense and honestly sometimes toxic domestic rivalries between massive clubs like Olympiakos, Panathinaikos, and AAK Athens. And whenever players came to the national team, those deep divisions usually came right along with them. But Rehhagel, he immediately demanded that these bitter rivalries be completely abandoned at the door. He insisted the national team come first, actively forging this tight-knit family spirit where every player was an absolute equal. The crucial point here is that this team sacrificed absolutely everything for one another. They worked tirelessly to track back and cover for their teammates. In fact, their run was so hilariously unexpected that right before the quarterfinal against France, players were frantically trying to reschedule their planned summer holidays and even their weddings. They genuinely didn't expect to still be in Portugal. But once they started winning, as player Vasilis Charitas noted, they vowed to give everything because they knew a miracle like this would probably never happen again. Finally, Section 5, the ultimate tactical achievement, reframing the legacy. It is definitely time to reevaluate how history views this Greek team. For far too long, their achievement has been shadowed by the harsh criticism they took from football purists along the way. The Guardian famously wrote that Greece were the only underdogs in history everyone wants to see gets beaten. Yeah, they were called ugly and boring by the media. But think about this critically for a second. If winning purely through defensive football was so easy, every underdog would do it. Every small nation would just park the bus and win the Euros. But they don't. Why? Because pulling this off requires an almost superhuman level of discipline and focus. Just think about the gauntlet they actually ran. They beat the host nation twice, including in the opening match and the final. They beat the defending world and European champions in France, and they shut down the tournament's most potent attack in the Czech Republic. Doing all of that required immense tactical wisdom and flawless, selfless execution. As tactical analyst Michael Cox suggested, this wasn't anti-football, it was the tactical achievement of the decade. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you to ponder this. When you look at the sheer scale of the giants they toppled and the flawless execution of their game plan, should we really mourn their lack of attacking flair? Or should we celebrate Otto Rehhagel's Greece for exactly what they were, the authors of the greatest, most brilliantly engineered defensive masterclass in the history of international football? It's a question that challenges the very heart of how we view the beautiful game. Thanks for joining me, and keep questioning what you know.